All right, welcome to the Interstate of Music podcast. And today I've got an awesome guest, somebody I've actually just gotten a chance to know probably in the last 8 months. Actually got to meet you during the COVID shelter in place and go through a whole bunch of things. Welcome to the show, Mark Schindler, District Manager for Roland. So welcome to the Interstate Music podcast.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So what I want to kind of do is, a lot of times I think people wonder how people get to the roles and to the jobs and to the companies they work for, and what some of those stages are. But when did you actually start getting interested in music? Are you a musician? Were you in bands, high school, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so I started getting into music in 4th grade, and I was in the school band playing woodwinds. And then I heard the Cars "Let's Go" on the radio one day, and I asked my dad what that noise was. He said it was a synthesizer, and I said, "Can I have one of those?" And he said, "No." So awesome. We kept rolling, and eventually he did get me several synthesizers, so God bless him. And then when I got to high school, I took I got out of playing woodwinds and got into synths, and then into guitars, because I was going to be a rock star. And then, it was a cool time to get into synths because it was right when digital was coming on in the late 80s.
Right. Yep.
So
I like to think the 80s was the best time, the best decade of music ever.
Well, maybe next to the 70s.
All right, fine. I'll give you that.
Maybe.
Maybe
the 80s were great especially for guys like me that were into synths, because that's when, I learned how to program on the early stuff, and I learned how to sequence and all that kind of thing. And, it's interesting because back when I first got into college, my entire rig was almost all Roland stuff. It was, a Roland D50 was my first real synthesizer.
Okay.
And I still have it. In fact, it still works. It's 40 years old. It's amazing.
So when you went to college, what did you go to college for? Were you trying to get into the industry, or what were you thinking?
Well, I was going to be a rock star, so I went into music.
Perfect.
So I went to Ohio State first, the Ohio State, I'm sorry.
That's right.
And I don't want to make anybody mad out
We don't want any of those hate comments coming in underneath.
Right. And Michigan still sucks, just FYI. And so when I got to Ohio State, I got in the music program, and I was studying classical piano and music education, but I really wanted to be a rock star, so I was also in an original band. And we had a pretty good following around Columbus, and did a couple of record company showcases, got a couple of tunes on the local lick show on the radio, and then time marched on and everybody went on to do other things. So I ended up transferring to Berklee College of Music out in Boston, and was going to do music and production and engineering until I found out how much those guys make. And then I switched to the music business program, and also did, piano, because you have to play if you go to Berklee. You can't just show up for business or whatever. And after that,
back then, what did music business mean back then as far as a degree and the education portion of it? And how different is it like what they would consider it now?
Well, for that program, it was all about record labels and radio promotion and things like that.
Yep.
It wasn't this side of the business at all.
Right.
Nobody ever brought this side up. So it was all about working at a label or doing radio promotion, those types of things. A lot of just normal business stuff too. One of the best classes I ever took was Peter Alhadeff, professor. He had the computer applications class. I learned how to use Excel. And shockingly, that was the best skill I could have had going into the music business in the mid 90s, because nobody knew how to do it. And data analytics was just coming in.
That's amazing.
So,
because honestly, it's funny you bring up Excel, because just my company alone, one of the initial things that everybody has to be able to do coming in is know Excel. And it's crazy what the longevity of I would call it a simplistic, it can be pretty complicated, but such a simplistic skill set. And for you to look back at it in college as a musician, somebody that wants to be a rock star, somebody that wants to drive into that music business, looking back and seeing Excel as something that was a key educational moment in your career, which is amazing, because you never know where you're going to end up.
and the early versions of PowerPoint. Those were the two.
Right.
I mean, those were some of the most important classes. And then we had, we took a lot of business classes like accounting and
Sure.
marketing and all that stuff, which is super important because when I left Berkeley, I got a job. My first job was at an independent record label in Columbus. Went back home, and then I ended up working for Universal Music Group for 20 years. And I did a whole bunch of different jobs there. But like I said, what got me noticed, I think, more than anything, was my ability to crunch numbers.
Yep.
And that was big. And I knew a lot about all the records and things like that because, like I said, I've been a lifelong music fan. I've got an enormous music collection. It's, over 7,000 CDs sitting in the other room and tons of box sets. And
that's awesome. And
still buying all this.
I think it's important. I think, and during your process, I think it's important to say, I mean, you can want to be something, and you can have a passion to be a professional golfer, professional musician. You can want to be an artist, but when it comes down to it, I think there's also that, okay, it can feel like it's a needle in a haystack opportunity. So what am I going to do to kind of make ends meet? What am I going to do for that secondary? Because my passion is always going to drive me to want to be that. So I'm always going to be pushing to be that. But what is the skill sets I need to actually pay my bills while I'm trying to get to be that?
Right. And, the other guys that were, when we were in the original band in Columbus, one guy's now an eye doctor. One guy's a big shot at marketing executive he was at Fox. Now he's doing he has his own marketing shop for television. Another guy's a professional photographer, and another guy's a producer down in Nashville. So, I mean, some of us were still stuck into the music realm, but other guys just went on and did whatever else, But the guy that's the eye doctor now, I still play in a band with after 30 years.
That's awesome.
So, I mean, we're still playing, and we do conventions and we travel all over the country just playing cover songs, which is great. Great excuse to get together with your buddies and drink some beers. And
well, and I think you've kind of found that a way to keep your passion alive, your connections, the camaraderie aspect of what music does, and you found a way to say, okay, if we can't be together a lot to practice, rehearse all the time, let's play songs we all know, right? So we can get together and plug it in, and all of a sudden it's like we never left each other, type of a thing. So, quick question though: you went from brass and woodwinds to synthesizers. So, what didn't hold your passion with the brass and woodwind side of life? That all of a sudden, was it just the electronic and the technology side?
Well, I guess really it's none of the music I listened to had a clarinet in it. So, what was I going to do?
Yeah.
I wanted to be, after I heard the Cars, I wanted to be in a rock band.
Right.
So and I always wanted to play piano. So my parents got me a piano, and I took lessons from one of the best guys in town and did all the piano guild stuff and, got good enough to get into college on it. So it was fun. And then on the side, learning how to program synths was just what I did,
And did you get kind of teach yourself how to program everything just by messing around with it, toying with it? Or is that something you got kind of some lessons with some basics into it? How did that process go for you?
Initially, it was just trial and error, just playing. I had a Moog Prodigy, and I was trying to dial in. It's a monophonic synth, so you can only play one note at a time. So I would dial in the sounds I hear on Rush records, like the Tom Sawyer keyboard solo. And there's a song on Permanent Waves called Jacob's Ladder. I dialed that sound in. But the thing about that was you couldn't save the sounds, so I had to write down the settings. So if I wanted to get back to them, I knew what I was doing, because you're just twisting knobs. And that's why when you see these pictures of Keith Emerson, he's got all those different keyboards with tape over this stuff so the knobs don't move, because you couldn't save the patches.
Yep.
Yeah. And then when I got to Ohio State, really didn't have anything like that. They're a traditional old school music college. They do classical piano, and they do, they didn't have anything like music business or like synth programming or sequencing or any of that kind of stuff. But when you get to Berkeley, it's a whole nother world. And that was right up my alley. So I took synth programming classes there, and it's part of the curriculum.
So let me ask you this, and this is no knock on one or the other, or it's just kind of looking back, having the ability to look back on it. Could you have gone and gotten just a business degree and gotten to where you wanted to be, or did the atmosphere of Berkeley, did that kind of keep you alive and thinking in a creative musician way? What do you think about that? Like, if you would have just stayed at Ohio State and switched to a business degree, and you personally kept the music side of it alive in your own direction, what are your thoughts on that?
I don't think I'd be in the same place I am now, because I wouldn't have met all the connections that I made.
Right.
You know, it's a different thing when you're at Berkeley too. It's like everybody there is there for the same reason, and a lot of people never graduate. And you know, I see guys still to this day. There's a guy in my class that won the Academy Award for the Birdman movie because he played all the drums in it, right? And I used to see that guy all the time on sessions when I was, you know, as an intern at recording studios around Boston, and he was always on sessions. Right. And then when I got in the record business, he would come, like when I was in Chicago, went to see Danilo Perez and Antonio Sanchez was playing drums for him. So it's like, you still run into all these people. The guy sitting next to me at graduation is Johnny Rabb, who's famous for being super fast on the drums. You know, he's got his whole thing going. So it's one of those things where you make the connections, and through that, you know, my roommate got a job at Universal, and then he helped me get in the door, you know, and I knew somebody there as well. But that's how you get in the door.
And I think that's a great point, because if you just take what you kind of figured out during those college years is the networking, the collaboration, just surrounding yourself with like-minded people, it is kind of what we should be doing with our own careers as well. You know, get ourselves.
Yeah, I think the only way you get jobs these days is networking, you know?
You're right.
Because, you know, you go on LinkedIn or whatever and see a job posted, and you post and you're one of 3,000 applicants. How are you going to break through that unless somebody goes, hey, this is a guy I know, I can vouch for him, give his resume a look.
And I think it's a great point that the networking side and getting to know everybody, that does start a lot sooner than it doesn't have to wait until you graduate.
Now, here's a great networking story about how I got to Roland, if you want me to go there.
Yeah, go there.
One of the great things about going to Berkeley as well was I got to be a much better player. And so when I got out of Berkeley, and I moved to Chicago for a while, and then I came up to Minneapolis where I'm at now. And I don't know if you guys know this, but back in the day, about a third of all the music industry billing came through Minneapolis because we had Best Buy, Target, and Musicland.
Yep.
So not many people know that this was the center of the record business, I should say.
Right.
But anyway, so I've been here for a long time. I was playing in a little cover band here, and I left that band and ended up in this other group. And in that group was a guy who was the chord rep, right?
Okay.
So then I met a bunch of his friends from the industry, and that ended up playing piano for a guy called Rocky Lynn, who's a great songwriter, and he had a couple of #1 country singles and things like that. And in his band, the guy playing acoustic and singing backups is now the CEO of Roland. So that's how I met Tony. And eventually Tony's the one that called me about this job. So if it hadn't been for all that stuff going on and these different things, and, you know, Tony and I got to know each other real well because we traveled around, and I drove all the time. And so we were in the car a ton. And at that time he was working for Fender. And I'd always, you know, people had always talked about Tony Price, but I never met him because he didn't really live here. He lived in Arizona. And
sure.
So, but then when I got in the band in Rocky's band, and I got in Rocky's band because the bass player from the other band went to play for Rocky. They needed a keyboard player, so he called me. You know, it's that thing where you just, it's just the groups of people that you hang out with and you get in a situation. Right.
And Minneapolis, honestly, has always been, and I don't know if a lot of people have known this through the years, such a great city for original bands coming up. You know, they had great venues. I don't know specifically how it is now, but when I was going up there, I was managing bands that we'd go up to Minneapolis and open for, you know, Johnny Clueless and you know, just a ton at the Fine Line, just a ton of cool venues, cool bands, great original music. What brought you to Minneapolis? Was it work? Was it what got you there?
Yeah, it was when I was at Universal. So in '99, Universal had bought Polygram Distribution, and in the great merger of '99, I got moved up here for change jobs. Essentially, it was one of those situations where, like, hey, would you like to move to Minneapolis or be unemployed? So
easy decision.
yeah, it's pretty. I started here too.
I lived there for about a year and a half, and I love it. The only thing that is a bummer about Minneapolis is literally winter's it starts a month sooner and lasts about a month longer. That was the only problem with it. Summers are gorgeous, fall's gorgeous, but that winter just kind of hangs around a little longer than I loved.
Yeah, but it makes you appreciate the summer more.
It's true. It's true.
Those 2 weeks are fantastic.
That's right. I love July 2nd to the 7th. It's fantastic. So so you got to Roland, and what exactly was your role? Like what was your job? What was your responsibility, and what kind of goes into it?
So I've only had one position at Roland. I've been here almost exactly 4 years, and I've always been district sales manager. So I cover all of the accounts in the Dakotas, Minnesota, and Wisconsin.
Yep.
And then also I do one dealer in Chicago.
Okay. And
one of the things I think that they liked about me is because when I was at Universal, I called on Best Buy and Walmart and Target, and those, that's several thousand storefronts, and we had 5,000 SKUs in Best Buy, for instance.
Right.
So I think that they like that about me because dealers like yourself, and there's some other big guys in Wisconsin that take a different thought process than Joe's Music Shop up the road.
Right. Sure.
So because I had, when I was in artist development, I dealt with all little record shops. I know how to navigate the small guys, and then I've worked my way up to the Best Buys and Targets of the world.
Sure.
So I also understand, because that's a completely different world and a completely different skill set.
Well, and that's a very valuable insight, because when you have people that are just calling on the small niche boutique, storefronts and that type of business, or really focused on keys, or really focused on guitars, and or just pianos, when you start to be able to bring that other insight in, they're still competing against those big players. Those boutique shops are still competing whether they want to believe it or not. So to be able to have somebody that is part of an organization to be able to bring, some of that knowledge and be able to answer some of those questions for any size, retailer, that's key. So, I mean, that's a huge value that you bring to that. Great experience.
Yeah, and I think too, one of the things I try to do is maybe try to bring some of these smaller guys into the 21st century in terms of analytics and having, you'd be surprised about how many people don't even have a PO system. It's just a piece of paper.
Yep. Yeah, it's very common. And the crazy thing is, in dealing with a lot of manufacturers across the industry, you still look at a lot of companies that that don't have all of the content and bullet points and part numbers and all the different images, lifestyle images, main images, all of that. And even if they have it, it's not all in one place. They've got to search all over for it. So even on the manufacturer side, there's still a variety of levels of, I would say, technology and to that analytics side of life. It's across the board. So it is nice that you bring that to who you work with.
Yeah, and right now it's good that I know how to forecast stuff, because the state of the industry right now, you got to be able to forecast so you can be able to, in a position to take whatever inventory becomes available.
What have you seen? I mean, it's like nothing you've probably ever seen. This last 12 months of the industry, what has this been like? Is a little bit of a resurgence in musicians, in the sense that everybody started to say, hey, I want to play something. I want to take this time and better myself. I want to learn what I always said I wanted to learn. But also, how has that affected the industry as a manufacturer and a brand?
Well, we didn't know what was going to happen when all this first happened, right?
Right,
Nobody
right.
had any idea. And I think me especially, I was incredibly lucky to be where I was because we never had to stop shipping, even throughout, because we made some decisions earlier in that year that turned out to be the right ones. I didn't, but the top brass at Roland J. Wanamaker did.
Yep.
And, at first we thought, well, this year's a wash, right? But then as soon as by the end of March, it was apparent to me that it was going to be crazy because now everybody's at home, has a lot more free time.
Yep.
And the people that were still employed, which was the majority of the country, had disposable income because they're not going out and spending it on other things.
Yep.
So a lot of people decided they either wanted to learn how to play or play better. So there was a ton, and you saw all of the manufacturers came with different programs. Like Roland had if you bought a Roland piano or you owned a Roland piano, you could get 3 months of free lessons from a company called Scoove.com. So it's an online piano lesson deal. I know Fender had their Fender Play.
Yep.
Right. Yep. Free for 3 months or whatever. So all of the different companies were doing that. And, last year it was crazy. The demand has not slowed down.
Right.
We keep thinking it's going to, but it hasn't. So I think a lot of people, you got to think that a lot of people who picked it back up, once you start going back to the office and they going outside, going to restaurants, going to picnics and all that, they might lose interest. Like that's usually what happens.
Sure.
But maybe the other side of the coin is maybe they had enough time to get good enough where they're able to play that F chord,
right,
which is the watershed moment of guitar, and they're going to stick with it. Who knows?
Right. And I think part of it too is, if you look at what's going on out there, people are even starting to say, even if they go back to the office, should we let them have one day that they get to work remote or 2 days that they get to work remote in the course of a week? And I do think people have realized a little bit of more life balance and how much that kind of matters to them personally through this. Me, what did I get out of COVID? I don't know. I ate too much pizza. That's pretty much what I got out of it. Didn't learn how to play anything, but I ate a lot of pizza. But it's one of those things where you sit there and you see this curve of the industry and what's happened. What does it look like as far as the next 12 months, the next 18 months, in your opinion, for the industry? Not just specifically Roland yet, but like just for the industry.
Are you talking in terms of demand?
I would say in terms of demand, but also live music, also streaming, also recording original music. Just what do you think it's elevated itself to because of this, other than just wanting to learn how to play an instrument for the musician that was a musician prior?
I think it opened up a lot of new avenues for existing musicians because now everybody's got the equipment and the know-how to stream.
Yes.
So I think you'll see a lot more live shows that are also streamed. So then you can have another revenue stream coming in, right? So if I have my favorite band in Cleveland and I can't go to Cleveland this weekend to see them, maybe they're doing a live stream and I can just watch that at home. And I'm pretty comfortable watching concerts at home. I saw, some guys did really good ones, like Joe Bonamassa did a great one from the Ryman.
Yep.
And it was funny because I tuned in and I'm watching the band and the second guitar player is a guy I grew up with in Columbus. And he's one of the best guitar players in Nashville now.
That's awesome.
He's in Bob Seger's band, for instance. And, it's fun to see your friends like, oh, holy crap, he's playing with Joe Bonamassa now.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think that's a key thing. And it was kind of like restaurants. When you look at the restaurants that didn't have an online menu, didn't have a delivery process, really kind of panicked through this. And some of them emerged and kind of got caught up into it. And some of them sadly went out of business. I think this was a huge opportunity for musicians to say, wait a second, this is just going to create an exposure opportunity, for us, instead of just hoping 12 people come to see us at the local bar. We could put it out there. So yes, those 12 people are there, but who knows how many people are following them across the country in a live setting.
Yeah, and a lot of bars are now set up with in-house streaming.
Yes.
So the band doesn't even have to do it.
Right.
I don't know what I don't think there's probably some lawyers somewhere that are going to cause problems with copyrights and and royalties and all that. But that all should be covered under ASCAP and VMI, so they should be okay. But I don't know all the ins and outs of it these days.
Right. That was the one thing I was wondering too.
Yeah, and I don't know the answer to that question. But I think one of the cool things too that we've done in this past year is that a lot of artists that you only get to see every couple of years come around. Like, for instance, Andy Timmons, who's a phenomenal guitar player, lives down in Dallas. He was in the band Danger Danger. I don't know if you remember those guys from the 80s. And he's just a monster guitar player. I think he played with Olivia Newton-John and all these other people who make a living. And he was artist in residence my first year when I was at Berkeley. So I did sound there for my work study job. And, he was a phenomenal player then. And now 30 years later, it's like, holy crap. And he does 2 shows every Saturday for an hour, and it's on some platform called Stage It. Paul Gilbert from Mr. Big, Racer X, he did a bunch of those with his wife, which were awesome. And just, they're one-off things. They don't record them, so you have to go to it to see it. Right. And like last week, I think I caught the Rolling Stones one, but he did one about how the Beatles influenced him. And then the second one was how the Rolling Stones influenced him, and he played some Rolling Stones tunes. And he's got a great setup, and he sounds phenomenal, and he plays great. And it's just cool to see that. And he'll answer questions if he's like, how'd you get that sound or whatever. He'll go through it and talks about his approach.
We there's only so much Tiger King you can watch on Netflix, right?
Right.
So it does help us kind of reach out and see some things that have been out there. So when it comes to Roland, what are some of the things that are most exciting as far as the equipment, the new things coming, the new trends, things that you're excited about personally, that you're out there talking about?
Sure. The Keytar, the Axe Edge, it's been the coolest product, I think. I love the Keytar. Most people think they're stupid, but I love them. The ones that we have now are awesome. They have the black one has all black keys even, and you can change the what they call the blade on it. You watch Dream Theater, Jordan Rudess, he's playing one now. He's retired his Klingon looking thing, and he's using an Axe Edge now. Nice. But in that Axe Edge is something called the Zencore Engine, which is our platform for the future. It's in the Phantoms, which is our flagship workstation line. It's in the Jupiter X and XM. It's in the RD88 stage piano. Like I said, it's in the Keytar. It's in our groove boxes. So any sound you make on any one of those instruments, you can import into any other Zencore instrument.
That's awesome.
Which is super cool. So I can be working with a guy who's making beats, and he can send me that, and I can import it right into my Phantom, and it sounds exactly the same because it's the same engine. And then the Phantom's amazing.
How long has that been going on with you guys? As
like
far
a year
as that,
and a half-ish.
Brilliant. Love it.
Yeah, it's the new platform moving forward, and it's not just a sound engine, it's a platform. So it's expanding. It's like Mac. I always look at it like the Mac iOS or even operating system for Macs. It's what first came out is not what it is now, and that's the way it's going to be with Zencore as well. So, and then an extension of that is the Roland Cloud, which I'm super excited about because we have all kinds of AU plug-in instruments of classic synths up there. So I can download a Juno 106 and a D50 and a JX3P and a Jupiter 8 and have them in my main stage to use on gigs or to doing recordings. And I mean, I have a D50 and I've listened to the D50 that's on the Roland Cloud, and I can't tell the difference. I mean, it's incredible. And that's a subscription-based service, which and to me, or you can just buy the instruments too if you want to do it that way. And there's something called Zenology on there, which is a plugin to use all of these things. It's incredible. The technology that's coming out of Roland right now is amazing. We just updated our flagship drum kits. I don't know if you know this, but Roland's the biggest drum company in the world. And we just updated our TD50s to the TD50X, and we finally have a digital hi-hat now. And that's game-changing for drummers. So that's super exciting. On the guitar front, on the Boss side, because Roland owns Boss as well.
Right. Yep.
The guitar technology is incredible. The Katanas are the best-selling amps in their price band. They model the impulse response of the way the tubes and the speakers interact, and they sound incredible. And you get over 60 effects for $239 or whatever it is. It's amazing because when I picked up a guitar when I was a kid, I got a Flying V copy knockoff thing from a pawn shop and a Gorilla practice amp. And I could not figure out why I don't sound like Iron Maiden when I got home. So I go to the music store by my house, and I'm like, here's what I got. Why don't I sound like Iron Maiden?
Yeah, this thing's broken.
Well, the guy I'm not making this up either. He pulled a DS1 Boss out of the cabinet and said, "You need one of these." So then I had to beg my parents for $50 more so I could get a distortion pedal.
Yep.
And our multi-effects, the GT1000, the SY1000 are incredible. I'm using the SY1000 myself live, and I'm the guy that has to change tunings a lot for different tunes. Like if we're playing Stones tune, I want to play an open G, so now I can just step on the pedal and I'm an open G. Or if I want to play Fat Bottom Girls drop D, I just step on the pedal and I've got that patch set up to be drop D. Sounds like a wall of Vox amps,
So let me
ask you got amp models.
Let me ask you a question on the technology side. It is the future. It is everything. When you've got your older generation of players, do you find them starting to open themselves up to the new technologies, or are they just comfortable where they at, or is it easy enough for them to catch on and learn?
I think it's across the board. Some people don't want to change.
Sure.
Some people always want to be on the cutting edge, and it's not like the technology is that difficult or anything, but some people, balk at plugging their amp into a computer to change its settings.
True.
Which I think is incredible because it gives you infinite possibilities. So for instance, on the Katanas, we have a thing called Boston Studio where you can go in and set up all the different effects, because you can use 5 effects at once. You can set them all up, name the pad. It's just it's the only way you can do it to change the actual effects between the 60. But then you can save it, and then you have that. And you can save live sets. So if you're a guitar player and you have a rock gig and a church gig, you can do your rock gig Saturday night. When you get home, plug it in your computer, and then throw your church set in there, and it's ready to go.
So as a musician and as somebody that knows the technology and the manufacturer side of this, what do you think is actually next for Roland, or just next for the industry as far as those next steps? Or is it just like we don't know yet because you've launched something that seems to be unending with opportunities and possibilities within what you already have?
Yeah, I think you're going to see from us at least more cloud-based things.
Okay.
And more content there, more patches, more programming potentials, all of that kind of thing. And I think you're just going to see on the rest of the side, I think you're just going to see the modeling get even better and better as memory gets cheaper, and
sure,
and the engineers figure that out. Roland makes their own chips, so it's the modeling that we have it's insane. I mean, the pianos, what you can do with a piano model is, you can go note by note and change it.
Right.
Across all 88 notes, you can make it so the lid's up, the lid's down, so you have more damper resonance, less damper resonance. You can jack up the string resonance. You can make it the strings longer, shorter, whatever. It's amazing.
That is awesome. Well,
Mark, and the way that the notes interact with each other too is incredible in the modeling situation, which you don't get in sampling.
Yeah, Mark, one of the things that I guess I think about this and I look at it a little bit different. There's other companies that make products in your category, and where are you guys falling and finding your kind of niche? Are you kind of hitting the gamut of price points and technology levels and tiers? What is the philosophy of Roland when it comes to that?
Well, I think you always have to be conscious of price elasticity and make sure you don't price yourself out of a particular segment, So I'm not involved in any of that, so I really don't know the ins and outs of it, but I do know that, there are decisions made when if a part goes up in price, and you're going to have to push that up over a certain level, are we going to kill the product?
Sure. Yeah,
I know they think about that stuff, and that's for guys above my pay grade, and they do a really good job. I think just, at times it's amazing to me to see people on the forums complain about, for instance, a Katana. Well, it doesn't have a tuner. Yeah, but it's a 100-watt amp. You have 5 models and it has over 60 effects in it.
Sure.
So buy a tuner. Or do
right.
harmonics. I don't know.
Right.
what do you want for $239 or whatever?
And I think it does. And I brought up that whole like range of pricing and everything because it does seem like it's such a sensitive industry because, I mean, let's face it. I mean, in a lot of cases, musicians, depending on what level musician they are, it's a hobby. It can be expensive. They're very price conscious, all of those things. And it can be tough to be able to hit it. So I know it's like you're saying, it's not necessarily, but you certainly have the logic in where things are fitting and why and what those pieces are. And I think it's important for you to, as a musician that's looking at any brand, you know, to look at the price points and look at those specs and see what you're getting and everything that you're getting. And make those judgment calls there because so many people look at that price point and just be like, I want everything for that price point, and it's just not realistic.
Yeah, and one of the knocks on the forums, at least, you know, because everybody's got an opinion these days,
right,
is that, you know, the Phantom came out. It's an incredible instrument, but it didn't have this, it didn't have that. But so far, we've updated it like 4 or 5 times, and you know, now it has multi-sampling. Now it has 4 additional synth models, which is the Juno 106 and the SH01 and things like that are free. You know, you didn't have to pay for them.
Yeah, value
and
adds.
Those synth models, this is another $600 we just handed you. We added supernatural strings and supernatural brass to it, and electric pianos and acoustic pianos, which people were clamoring for. So it's not like you buy it and that's it.
Yeah,
you're going to get upgraded. The katanas started out with only you know 50 some effects, and now there's over 60 effects in there, and it's just through updates, you know.
Right. And I think that is what you mentioned, you know, the technology and the cloud base and all the rest of it. That is where that value of Roland is coming. Is that they've built in the technology that can have upgrades and can last longer because of the quality as well as the effects and the technology there to make it better without having to go buy a new instrument, which I think is key because the fact of the matter is if you're going to make a guitar play different or sound different, you have to buy a bunch of additional accessories. But in so much of what you're talking about, it's in the upgrade aspect of it, which is unique.
Yeah, it's amazing. And the other thing too, to your point about price points and what you decide to buy, you know, it also depends on what you want to do. So for instance, in our looper line, we've invented, you know, Boss invented the loopers, incredibly popular thing. Yep. So we have the RC1, which is, you know, around $100. Then we have the RC5, which is around $200. We have the RC10R, which is like $250 ish. Then we have the RC500. So as you go up the line, you're getting more and more features. Right. So when you start out, you might only need an RC1, but you're going to probably get bored with it pretty quick once you figure it out. You're going to want those drum sounds that are in the RC5. Right. Right. And then when you get to there, you're going to be like, oh, I wish I had an A and a B section, and there's the RC10R. So part of it is trying to figure out where you're going to end up and what you should, you know, it's like buying a computer. You don't get the least amount of memory you can get when you buy a computer. You try to get the most that you can afford. Exactly. You know, and the other thing too about instruments is what I found is that if you're guys that are serious about it, the money's not really the option, the obstacle. That's how you get the money to pay for it. You're going to do it. Right. That's right. You know, it just depends on how long you have to wait until you can get that. Exactly. And there's one company in the industry that does their own financing, and they found that people will pay that bill before they'll pay their car insurance, or they'll pay that because they don't want to get cut off from their gear. That's awesome. Well, which is insane. It's insane, right? So Mark, thanks for taking the time. Thanks for letting us get a chance to know you personally and your journey to where you are now at Roland, and letting us know a little bit about where Roland's at and the technology and everything about it. And we wish you luck in the future, and we look forward to what Roland has to offer here in 2021 and 2022 and the years to come. So thanks so much for being part of the Interstate Music Podcast. And thanks for having me. We're so happy to have you as one of our great dealers, and we look forward to doing a lot of business and more things like this with our product specialists and with other people within Roland to give you way more insight than I could ever give you on the products.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Jeff. Cheers.
All right, we're good, bud.